I'm hoping to hear from each of you in very different fields about how you have been coping with that, how internally you've changed the way you do business for this new era of speed within traditional structures of planning annually. So we have immediately to my left Geraldine Kalpin, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of Hilton, and then Maggie Chan-Jones, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of SAP, and Karen Gertie at the end, the Senior Director for Marketing and Media at New York City Ballet, just up the road. But Geraldine, perhaps we can start with you, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of an overview of the two teams that you oversee and sort of how you've been trying to navigate this challenge.
So, hi everybody. The two teams I oversee are the Global Marketing Organization and the Digital team. Historically, a few years ago, we had them under two separate leaders. Understanding the importance of digital, we brought the two together in the summer of last year. And my challenge has been since then really around creating a single culture, but also really around making sure that how we allocate our marketing budget isn't siloed in terms of we have a digital marketing budget and we have a traditional marketing budget or offline and online. We need to allocate our spend and where we spend our money across the spectrum based on where we see trends, what our guests want. So really we have an annual budgeting cycle, but things change. You can't budget every 12 months. So we have created what we call off-cycle, which means that as things change, as we determine that we need either new digital capabilities or new campaigns, we will, as you do, create the business case and then go and demonstrate the return on investment and get the money.
So can you give an example maybe recently of something that came up quickly that you had to adapt promptly to and how you went about it?
I've got a great example. So I took on this role in around September of last year. It was about the time that we had determined that we wanted to really hone in on encouraging our customers around the world to engage directly with Hilton, book directly with us. And so that marketing campaign, we galvanized the teams around one single mission. Both marketing and digital. We had the guys, the VP from Asia Pacific, from EMEA, on all of the brand heads on a call every single week. And within 4 months, we launched the biggest campaign that the company has ever done. It's called Stop Clicking Around. I don't know if you've heard of it. We have TV campaign. We launched it at the Grammys in 15th of February. It's stuck in my mind, 15th of February. And that came up, wasn't budgeted. It had the intended consequence of bringing the traditional marketing teams, the regional marketing teams, and the brand teams and digital all together, because I gave them one single mission and not quite enough time to do it in. So they kind of rallied around it, and it really gave them such a sense of pride that we hit it on time and on target. And in terms of budgeting, we demonstrated the business case, costed it out, and actually we're just changing how we spend the money. It's not necessarily more that we're spending, it's actually spending it in a different way. So instead of doing 13 different campaigns across our 13 different brands, we are doing one campaign that spans all of the brands. So sometimes it's about more money, but sometimes it's about changing and consolidating how we spend our money.
And probably changing from one channel to the next as well.
Yeah.
So I want to get back to that, but Maggie, maybe we could go to you. So
Sure.
You're coming at this in a very different industry. Within software and within tech, you've been in tech for a long time. Mm-hmm. How have you seen, both in the organizations where you've worked and also, I'm sure, peers at other tech companies thinking about sort of speed and planning within their enterprise?
Yeah, the interesting thing, Charlotte, when we look at the tech industry, we really do move very fast on the innovation side. And we see that innovations are also happening not only on the technology side, but also on the business models, on how customer journeys are changing. So what I've seen in the technology industry is, like what Geraldine said, you really have to set aside some budget for, something that is coming up, immediately that you need to act on. And at the same time, I would love to get some thoughts from the audience too. How many of you, when you start the year, that, more than half of your budget is pretty much locked on things that you're already committed on doing? Not as many. That's interesting. I would say a lot, when I look at my organization, a lot of the marketing budget, I would say more than half, is actually locked because we have multi-year commitments on things that, on initiatives that we have to focus on partnerships that we have committed to. So then therefore, we really are flying a plane while we're building the engine in some cases. So the thinking is, how do we then map out a longer term vision? So for example, my team has been spending a lot of time on working our marketing vision for 2020 so that we can map out over the course of 5 years, what are the changes that we need to make on the people side? We spent a lot of time this morning talking about talent strategy, because you're not going to change your talent strategy and expect that all of a sudden majority of your workforce would be, digital savvy or having the right skill set for the digital age. So we have to map that out. And also, the other piece is, how do you think about what are some of the changes, what are some of the innovations that are evolutionary versus revolutionary?
Tell me, unpack that last bit. What do
Sure.
you mean?
So let me give you a perfect example. Evolutionary. So at SAP, we have quite a bit of sponsorship partnerships. For example, I know NFL, Don is speaking later. We have great partnership with the NFL. We have great partnership with NBA and others. So the evolution that we have been changing in a marketing organization as we look at these type of sponsorship or partnership is we went from focusing on brand awareness to now showcasing technology. How do we bring technology to life through those type of partnerships? So in the case of NBA, as an example, which is also based out of New York, we actually partner with them to power the NBA stat zone. So in that case, we are actually co-innovating with our customers and our partners to actually bring a better fans experience. So that is very evolutionary because we're still doing a similar partnership, but the way we do partnership with marketing, with our marketing partner is very different. Revolutionary is, let's take an example of social media today. Everyone uses it. So then the question becomes, how do we use social media to enable social selling in the enterprise B2B selling area so that you're no longer pushing content to your customers or prospects. You're actually sharing valuable information with your prospects. So that to us is a complete new area that we're investing into.
Okay, well, again, I want to get back to you, but Karen, you come from this from a very different angle, nonprofit, smaller, in an environment with tough budgeting.
Sure.
And you've been able to do a lot with that. So maybe you could give us a bit of an overview of, as you've progressed at New York City Ballet, the types of solutions that you've been able to come up with to deal with some of the constraints.
Sure, and as I think was said a little bit earlier, for us it hasn't been about spending more, it's about reallocating the funds that we do have. We, going into the recession, our institution was in the very unenviable position of not only dealing with the marketplace challenges of that situation, but also we had been kind of pulling or building a small deficit in the years leading up to that. And so the institution was challenged with kind of rethinking the way that it does business and bridging that deficit, which meant tightening belts at a point in time where everyone was challenged on a financial front. And so we have not dealt, and it was kind of right around the time that we were really starting to dip our toe in the digital world as well. And so it's been probably a half-decade process for us to build those budgets up to actually be able to be operating digitally speaking for us. Tandem with that, we've also brought in, we're an organization that it's almost a 70-year-old company, and we tout ourselves as creating everything in-house on the artistic side. Our dancers are brought through a school, that are trained in a very specific way, to move in a very specific way, the style of the company. All of the ballets that we perform on stage are created at Lincoln Center in our home. We don't bring in works from other companies that have been created elsewhere. And so we've kind of taken that approach on the administrative side in the marketing department too. Also very different from the corporate world. I oversee 7 different areas, and in the corporate world, most of those places most of those departments are farmed out very differently. So I'm overseeing brand, I'm overseeing sales, I'm overseeing creative. So it's a much larger job with a much smaller budget than most people are looking at. But we, over the course of the last 3 years, made a conscientious decision to bring all of those departments in-house. We had been working with agencies before, and the knowledge base that provides us to be nimble and to be able to create new types of content and to really create authentic types of content that we can then push out digitally, bringing those teams in-house has really been a smart move for us. But also when you take a look at the spending, it's always about us robbing Peter to pay Paul, because we value the ROI that we have been achieving and the results that we've been achieving with our digital marketing efforts, so that we're constantly pulling from the traditional. And I would say that we've doubled that budget in the last half decade. And now we're spending about 25% of our annual advertising budget in the digital space.
So you get to a really interesting point, and this is something that people talk about all the time for decades now, but we don't know which half of our marketing spend is wasted, okay?
None of it.
Yeah, none of it, I'm sure, right? Everyone in this room agrees with that. But it is getting easier, right, to measure which campaigns drive results. I'm sure there are people in this room whose companies are sort of expressly trying to help you do that. So how are you thinking about measurement and sort of performance-based marketing, and what type of metrics are you using? What are the outcomes that you're looking for? So maybe we can just go down the line about how you're thinking about performance-based marketing.
So we have, probably everybody in the room might be similar. Historically, digital marketing was much easier to measure, and all of the offline and TV and print was much harder to attribute. And then you've got all your last click attribution and all of that. We have got several tools that are looking at our marketing attribution and our spend across all of our channels and the interrelation. We put that in place it's quite an expensive tool. We put it in place probably about 2 years ago, decided to make the investment. And again, looking at the name of this panel, Planning at the Speed of Innovation. Planning is really hard while you're trying to innovate. So when people say to me, can I have a 5-year plan for digital? I say, no, you can have an 18-month plan for digital.
And even that, it's probably quite fluid.
Even that is quite challenging. Yeah. And actually, we do a 60 to 90-day agile planning in terms of our app, in terms of the development and what we put into the app, the features and functionality. But on the marketing spend side, we have put in place this tool 2 years ago, and it has fundamentally changed how and where we spend our money in terms of which brand. So we have 13 brands, and then we have the master brand, which is obviously Hilton. And so making sure that we're spending for the right brand in the right channel, and the different brands behave differently. So Hampton, for example, will respond differently to a TV campaign than, for example, our Doubletree or Waldorf Astoria. So the tool really does help us get a better return on investment. It helps us, it's not so much for us about lowering cost, it's more about driving more revenue and driving more market share. But we did invest quite significantly in a marketing optimization tool. We internally call it Yoda. I don't know why we came up with that, but we call it Yoda. And Yoda tells us, it takes all of the ambiguity and all of the kind of debate out of where we spend our money. And it really does help us drive to this campaign that we recently did. It helps us understand where should we spend and what will we get from it. And it's a really interesting model. And we then go back and look at how accurate was it? It predicted we would get X for Y. And it is a very scientifically accurate measurement, which is great when I have to go back and ask for more money, because you can then demonstrate, actually, this is a return on investment, here's the proof, Here's why we need more.
I'm picturing you going into all your meetings with the C-suite with a Yoda next to you to give you added heft. But
It's very, and it actually enables us to move faster because you don't have lots of meetings and we have lots of stakeholders and lots of people to get on board, but when you've got data and science, there isn't a lot of argument. So you can kind of walk in, show your case, done. Nobody can really debate with, I'm going to give you a 20-to-1 return on investment. You don't get that from a bank. So,
Maggie, how are you thinking about this?
Yeah, performance management is very critical for us, especially being a software company that focus on data analytics. So when we think about performance measurement, it's not only on the end result R2I, which is also very critical. At the same time, we also look at the overall customer experience as well. So to give you an example, we are all at an event right now. At some of our events at SAP, we actually use sensor-based technology to actually map out, we use the heat mapping to understand, where do our customers and prospects or the attendees spending their time, when we have different solution areas, and where are they consuming content? And therefore, how do we continue to drive better experience for them? Because we're literally looking at millions of data points, and we massively distill that data, talking about big data, is to understand how do we continue to provide a better customer experience. And in return, we know which are the customers that actually end up spending more money with our company because of the experience. And then coming back to then the overall performance management, then we can really look at the marketing mix. We can, of course, looking at the digital footprint and understanding, what type of content, what type of marketing mix and marketing channels work for what kind of audiences. And then we can also look at what does the ROI look like. So whether we're investing in digital channel or the online to offline channel or social channel and across the different regions. And best of all, for me personally, I have to be running live. The way I think about running live is I have what my team call a CMO dashboard. So it's on my iPad that I can look at any given time. I can look at what does the social sentiment look like for our brand? Or if we have a specific campaign that is going out, what does that social sentiment look like? And we can also look at, what is the demand funnel look like? And I can send from my CMO dashboard over to one of my leaders in, let's say in Germany and say, hey, something's looking like you guys are doing really well in Germany. Can you, and I can send her a graph of what that looked like so that she can get back in real time to me and say what are the things that they're doing, and maybe I can replicate in other developed countries.
So I want to take one more question for Karen, but then I'll open up to the audience. So please do get your questions ready. There will be people with microphones coming around to you, or you can also submit questions on the app, as you now know well. But Karen, I was hoping just to talk a little bit more about some of the types of things you've been able to do at NYCB as you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. So I was really interested the other day when I was clicking through the New York Times to see the video that some of your dancers did with Cole Haan, which was a Cole Haan video, but New York City Ballet was very much featured in it. And perhaps you could just talk us through maybe one or two examples of non-traditional, down the fairway. You're not doing big TV advertisements, right? So kind of the untraditional campaigns that you've been able to move forward with and how you think about impact.
Yeah, the Cole Haan example, actually, that's a sponsorship with New York City Ballet. And that is one area that I don't oversee that would traditionally live under marketing in the for-profit world that tends to live in the unearned revenue or the development fundraising side in the not-for-profit world. But as we've grown, obtaining corporate sponsorship at New York City Ballet, those lines have definitely blended. And obviously, as I oversee brand, I'm very much part of the picture in determining whether or not the sponsor's coming in, creating material that aligns with us, whether or not that sponsor, first and foremost, aligns with us from a brand perspective, and then the materials that they're putting out beyond that. So I do have a very close watch over that type of a partnership. That in particular started with Cole Haan being interested in 3 of our dancers as brand ambassadors for them. And of course, they can always come in, they can pay them to come and work with them. They were developing a shoe line with them based on, comfort But they realized that they weren't able to tap the power of the brand of New York City Ballet if they didn't come in as a sponsor of the company overall. So of course these 3 individuals could work with them, they could use their names, but they don't carry the weight of the brand of the institution that they're aligned with. So Cole Haan was very, very smart in that, because oftentimes, we're not exactly the least expensive organization to, quote unquote, get in bed with on a sponsorship level for many, many reasons, but they understood the value of that, and so they upped the ante and they brought us in they came in as a corporate sponsor of the company overall. It's a 3-year sponsorship. We're in year 2 of that right now, and so they've done a wonderful job with creating native content like that with the New York Times. This was a campaign that released last week called The Art of Elegant Innovation, I think it's called, and it was shot at the Oculus at Calatrava's new space down at the World Trade Center transportation hub. So it was a really great example of 2 brands elevating each other. You could never have made a shoe look incredibly elegant in that space, but when you put it on 5 dancers and move within that space, all of a sudden, we've lifted each other up there. And so it's really great for us to have been involved in a campaign like that is a much higher level exposure for our brand than we could ever get for ourselves. Although, we've been focusing in that area for some time now, and we are an industry leader in brand content from a video standpoint. And it's really helped elevate our footprint, digitally speaking, in all of our paid advertising efforts as well. We create 15 different types of content now that we are pushing out on an annual basis that support not only the institution from a brand perspective, but it could drill down to getting to know our dancers a little bit better. It could drill down to understanding, we have a complicated product, so a lot of those pieces tend to do the heavy lifting without feeling like you're going to school, of understanding what the ballet is that you're maybe potentially coming to see. So it's been invaluable and an economical way for us to kind of tell our story, which is important for a 70-year brand, which as you move further and further away from your creators and the knowledge that the general public has of you, it's important to be able to tell those stories.
So we have a question from the app for Geraldine, and then someone will bring you a microphone. We'll come to you next. So in the Stop Clicking Around campaign, it sounds exciting. Can you speak to the upsides and the downsides, both in terms of implementation and results, when you're moving to such a big campaign that spans so many brands?
Thank you. Indulge me for just a minute. This is my story. Stop Clicking Around campaign, it was different for Hilton in that it was a little cheeky. And it was to say to people, you don't need to click around, you get your best value, you get the best price if you book directly with us, hence the name. It was, I got this role, as I mentioned, both digital and marketing at the same time as we launched this campaign. We are the most famous hotel brand in the world. We wanted a campaign that allowed us to be big and bold. The upsides are around, we are on TV in primetime spots. We're at Times Square on one of the digital billboards on Times Square. One of the upsides is the team members. I was at a conference yesterday, having such a big, bold campaign and having it consistently everywhere. So we're in airports all over the world. It's not just getting our message across to our customers. The pride that it gives the team members when they see a big, bold campaign in prime retail, in prime spots, prime placements. People are coming up to me saying, my friend phoned me the other day and said, I saw this Stop Clicking Around campaign all over the TV. So some of the intended consequences are internally to the company and to our organization. We've unified across one campaign all of our brands. It's live in China, in Russia, in Germany, everywhere. And that has allowed us to, back to the earlier question about where you allocate your money, we didn't have 13 different production costs. We have one campaign. So one of the upsides is internally there's a sense of pride and a sense of motivation. You walk into some of our hotels and the front desk agents are wearing these little bands. It's kind of like unifying the company. Downsides. The upsides, of course, also are we launched it four weeks ago, 15th of February is the date that it aired. we've got record all-time highs on our app downloads, web traffic, etc. So the finance guys are kind of happy too, because we are seeing the return on investment. It's not without complications. I guess the downsides are, I'm honestly trying to find what I'm trying to think through the downside of the campaign. As I say, it's kind of achieving our objectives in terms of the end results. It wasn't without complication. Each of the brand heads believed that they had to have a different iteration of it. And it doesn't necessarily work on property. In, for example, the Waldorf Astoria in New York, we haven't got elevator raps saying stop clicking around. But in most of it works in most of our other hotels. And when we took it to market research, unbelievably, and for those of you in the room, it researched well in China, in Russia, in Germany, in Korea, in the US and the UK. And that was really surprising to me that it was this kind of stop clicking around thing worked everywhere. So downsides, I might have created a little bit of dust in the process. I left a bit of dust behind us. We moved really, really quickly to get it out there. And so maybe there's a bit of, I think it was complicated, but we haven't yet seen the downside of it. And I'm not saying that because I'm in front of all of you guys, all of you marketing professionals, but we haven't yet. I would say it was complicated to get done, complicated to get all the stakeholders unified against one thing, but we don't want an easy life. Complex is good.
So we'll go to this gentleman here, but please say who you are. Thanks.
Yes, my name is Roy Weissman from MediaJobs.com, and this question's for Geraldine. It sounds wonderful. You have your tool, your data. Everybody loves predictability, lower risk, higher reward kind of thing. But where's the room for creativity? Some of the greatest marketing breakthroughs came from some crazy idea that made sense, but there's no data. And with all the data you have, you're effectively training your senior management to always have a metric. Now you go in with this new idea, well, where's the numbers? How do you respond to that? Because with all this data, aren't we becoming so mechanized, new ideas will go out the window?
That's a great question. And I do think that over the last decade, big organizations have chased the lowest ROI. Chase the highest ROI. And that has meant we've put everything into digital, and some of the creative concepts are, you can't prove it. So I think there has to be a balance. You do want to deliver the numbers. You do want to you do want a strong return on investment. As marketeers, we do want to prove our value and our team's value. However, you can't be addicted to it. And so to your point about how do you still ensure creativity, I think it is also about you have to be prepared to take risks and place bets. And I think if you have a strong track record of holding yourself and your team accountable to return on investment, to the right thing, to delivering on time what you said you would do, then when you want to take a risk or you want to place a bet, you will get the support of senior management to do that. For example, stop clicking around. Our big premium placements that we have not done before, unifying one campaign, all of our brands everywhere in the world. We've not done that before. We've not spent the degree of money that we are spending on this. So that was a bet and a risk that we took. But again, and it's quite creative. I hope I would say that, wouldn't I? But you have to, I think you build a track record, but you have to balance between, if you always chase the highest ROI and the last click and the last dollar, that's a very short-term thing because you need to build brand awareness. You need to also be obsessive about the customer because it doesn't really matter about anything else because if you don't look after your customer, if you don't talk to them in a way that's relevant to them, it doesn't matter whether you're creative or not, it won't be relevant. So it's a balance.